Foul demon, face the vengeance of the Moon Knight.
Hello everyone, welcome to Tsunami Studios, and today's video is another part of the Moon Watch. For those of you who are new to this channel, I am a huge Moon Knight fan. I have loved this character for a long time. He's one of my favorite characters of all time, probably in all of literacy. Like, if I had to think of any character outside of him that I love as much as him, I can't. I think this is my favorite character in all of literacy. I love it to death. So I wanted to share my love with you guys. I started a YouTube channel. I'm talking about Moon Knight. I talked about the comic books, the stuff we could see in the movie or in the Disney Plus show, that kind of stuff. I have a lot of those. You can check them out. I've done some casting for the TV show. But today, we are looking at where to begin reading the character. Some of you might be watching this video, you're like, oh, he's got a Disney Plus show coming out. I'd like to know a little bit about him before I go into that show. So where should I start? Do I start with the new stuff? Do I go back to the old stuff? What is the best place to start reading Moon Knight? Well, I have a lot of opinions when it comes to where the best place is to start reading Moon Knight, and my opinion happens to be there is a lot of weird jumping on points for this character. Because I think in order to grasp everything that Moon Knight represents and what Mark Spector represents, you have to kind of start where it begins, because if you go jump into like some of the good modern stuff, you need that background in order to understand the weight that it carries and why it's so important to have that in it. I think there was a good jumping on point kind of in the more modern stuff, but the creator turned out to do a few things that I don't support, so we're not going to be talking about that. So I have a list of a couple places to start from. Here's some books you should read if you want to see him on a team, if you want to read some of the solo stuff. These don't have to be in any particular order. These are just things that give you a grasp of what this character is. But if you wanted to read them in order, I highly recommend doing it that way, because I think it allows for a better flow. You'll understand certain things in the modern era because of what happened in the previous golden era for this character, and it would make a lot more sense. So here's where you should start reading Moon Knight. These are the best comics to read if you're just getting into the character. And we are going to start with his original run. I know that's you could easily pass on that, but it's important, I think, to see where this character ends up to go back to where he starts. Now, the original volume, it's 38 issues. It's by Doug Mensch and art by Bill Sienkiewicz. It looks fantastic. The stories are very unique and interesting. 38 issues. It's a quick, breezy run, and I'm not going to say it's my favorite run of the character, but it's one of the most important runs, I think, just to see what it is that this story is about. We get his origin in the first issue, which is the book right here. We figure out who this character is. We get all the key players going forward into the mythos. We figure out the love interests, the sidekicks, the characters we love or we hate, and some of the most important villains are prominent in this run. There's some great, more, not as psychological as some of the later runs, but I think there's some great stuff seeing here with the villains and just building up a mythos for this character. And that's a big important thing that not a lot of other runs really do, is build up a mythos and a rogues gallery for him. It's always, we're pulling back from what we created in this run, and we're updating a few certain things, which I think is really important and really cool. It's a good run. It's a pretty solid run. Like I said, it's not my favorite, but if you want to get a feel of what this character is, it's probably the more standard stuff for the character. If you're looking for your maybe like a Captain America style story or a Hulk style story, just one of those like prominent characters. If you want one of the classic kind of story, this is where you go when you want that for Moon Knight. And if you guys are looking for something in that era that's where he's on a team, something like that, he does join the West Coast Avengers in their second volume. Starting with issue 21, Moon Knight becomes a prominent member of that team. He has certain things going on where he's kissing a certain lady. I've talked about him kissing that lady a few times on this channel, and in subsequent other people's shows I've talked about it. West Coast Avengers is a really good idea for a book. I'm really excited that it came back, and then it kind of fell flat because nobody read it. But if you want Moon Knight on a team, I think it's a good place to start. It's that golden era. It's not going to be as extravagant as some of the later stuff for the character, but it's a nice, solid place to start, and it gives you a foundation for what this character can be and who he is on a team, and I think that's very important. And during this time, there's a couple other shorter runs for Moon Knight. There's a couple ones that are 6 issues and 4 issues, and there's a couple of smaller things there. And during this time, too, we get one of the longest runs of the Moon Knight character, and that is Mark Spector, Moon Knight, which is another great run. I did not put it on my list, sadly. It's solid, and I think a lot of people enjoy it, but I don't think if you want to jump onto this character, you don't have to read everything. And that's the same with every character in comics or in books. You want to read what's going to get you where you need to go for the next important spot. So that's why I'm kind of just picking these things that I think are very important for what this character is and who he becomes in the subsequent reading stuff. So we take a huge gap of time. We're not talking about anything in the 90s, and then we jump to 2006, where this character finally gets the treatment of the modern era. This is where everything kind of becomes a little more intense, a little more believable, and it's just very interesting stuff. We get Volume 5 of Moon Knight is where we go next. And that run kicks off with Charlie Houston, who does arguably, I say arguably because I don't agree with this, I say arguably the best run on Moon Knight, and it starts with The Bottom. Now, The Bottom is, if you guys aren't familiar, it's pretty much, I think, where he gets the term Marvel's Batman. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I want to do a video talking about how he's different than Batman, and that we might do that after this one as the next Moon Knight thing we do. But it's gritty, he has the money, you're seeing where that's all coming from, you're seeing the villains in this dark way. They're turning this character into somebody who could be a vibrant figure in Gotham City. It's dark, it is poetic in a lot of ways, and it gives us the iconic scene of Mark Spector cutting Bushman's face off, which, again, I think that's the most graphic thing that's ever happened in the Moon Knight run. So, if you guys are on the belief that the Moon Knight TV series should be a hard R rating, but you don't know anything about the character aside from you think he's a hard R, this is the run you should read, because it is graphic, it is intense, it is depressing, there's a lot going on here, and it also relies heavily on the mythos of some of the stuff we have previously established. Like with Bushman, with Black Spectre, this run lasts for 30 issues. Charlie Houston is not attached to every project, but there's also a lot of tie-ins, which tie-ins can, I think, weigh down a story sometimes because it ties into certain events happening in Marvel Comics at the time. That's not a big deal. I think overall, The Bottom is a great place to start, especially if you want the modern stuff. It's not going to be for everyone, which is really sad to say, but in order to, I think, to understand the gravitas of what The Bottom is and what that run represents, I think you should go back to the original run and just get a feel of the character's origin and his villains and all that stuff, because it definitely helps if you're viewing when you understand what's going on with that character. So Charlie Houston's The Bottom, Volume 5 of Moon Knight. It started in 2006. That's where you should go next. And then we have, I think, one of my favorite runs. I put it in my top 2 runs of Moon Knight, and this one is just kind of small. This was the first book I picked up for Moon Knight, so it holds a place in my heart. This is a 10-issue run, and it's very hit or miss. I don't think a lot of people are big on it. It's kind of a smaller one, but it picks up kind of right where Volume 5 leaves off, and it's called Vengeance of the Moon Knight, and it premiered in 2009, and pretty much what this is, if you are looking at this from a kind of story structure, the first act is Volume 1. The second act is the Houston run and that era. The third act would be Vengeance of the Moon Knight. This is kind of where all the dark actions that happened in the previous stories of the character, they come back into this book, and you see the gravitas that the character holds and how he is trying to redeem himself in the eyes of his god, in the eyes of the heroes around him, and become this prominent figure in the Marvel Universe. This is his redemption arc, and I think it's a very important arc that a lot of people forget. If you were to never make another Moon Knight comic after the first 5 issues of Vengeance of the Moon Knight, it's a great swan song to that character. You get a lot of great moments. You see him interact with a lot of the other people of the Marvel Universe. How is he reacting to Khonshu in here? It's taking all the dark stuff, and we're like, we don't need him to be gritty and hardcore and killing people and all that stuff. We're going to reel him back in. We're going to make him the superhero. That's what this one is. Vengeance of the Moon Knight. I think it's very important. It takes a lot of great stuff from the mythos and brings it back in a cool way. And it pretty much shows why Bushman is his archenemy. And I think that stuff's really cool. And kind of springing out of that too, we get into the modern era team book for Moon Knight. And there's not a lot of Moon Knight on the modern teams. I mean, he makes appearances here and there, but in 2010, Ed Brubaker launches this book called Secret Avengers. If you aren't familiar with Secret Avengers, imagine if they had a spy team or an espionage-style team. A lot of fascinating characters on there. It was a lot of characters that didn't get a lot of play. And one of the main characters in there was Moon Knight, because during this time we're doing Revenge of the Moon Knight, or Vengeance of the Moon Knight, I should say. And in that time, Steve Rogers sees Moon Knight as this figure who's changing himself, who's growing. It's like, you're seeking redemption. Let me help you get to that next step in your redemption. I want to put you on this team to help me out, become an actual Avenger. This is where Moon Knight becomes an Avenger, and I think that's really cool. And he's appeared in a few other stories here and there. He appeared in that Infinity Wars where he was the Arachnite. He appeared in Age of Ultron, that weird story event. But he's never really been on an official team for that long, except for the Secret Avengers in the first volume of that book. And I think that's really important for this character because, again, it feels like that next step in his story arc. You start with him in volume 1 of the arc, right? He is this hero who's coming into his own. He's got a rogues gallery showing up. It's kind of an origin story, right? And that's important, and that's really fun. He joins the West Coast Avengers for a bit. It's the Golden Age or the Silver Age, depending on how you're looking at the character's history. I know it's kind of in the modern age when he first appears, but I'm going to say it's his Silver Age or his Golden Age, right? It's his time like that. So he's on that kind of team. He's with Hawkeye and Mockingbird and War Machine, and everyone's having a good time there. We go to the modern era. Things are getting a little more intense and gritty. He's fighting. He's killing his villains. He's breaking his legs. He's pushing people off of buildings. He's scared of his own identity. We're starting to really hone in on this idea of the mental illness inside Mark Spector, and that's important. I've talked about it a lot on my channel, too. You guys can go back and see that, but the mental illness angle, I don't think needs to be played up that much. I think it should just be prominent that there is something wrong with Mark Spector, or that's multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, one of those things. You can play those up, I think, to a certain extent, but you also should have the intrigue of mystery. Is Khonshu real, or is it all in his head? That's another important angle, and that's played up a lot here too. And then you go into that is the dark, gritty time, and then you go to Vengeance of the Moon Knight. Here is his redemption, where he's becoming a good man again. He's figuring out how to be a hero once more, and losing a part of himself along the way to become the man he is now, and that's important. And a lead off to that is the Secret Avenger stuff, right? Now he's part of a team again. He's a full-on hero. This is when he's finally being embraced by the Marvel Universe and becoming the hero he's meant to be. We're out of the Silver Age. We're out of the Golden Age. He's no longer just the campy little guy who likes moons and Egyptian stuff. He is now an official hero of the Marvel Universe, come Secret Avengers. We've seen his entire arc from his inception to his redemption. And here is where we're going to give you my final thing. If you want to read a Moon Knight story, I'm trying to do this in the structure of this is an entire guy's life story, and here is where it ends. If you want what I believe to be the final Moon Knight book and the conclusion to everything that should be this character, this is where you should end off. And we have books come out after this. Bemis had a run, and that was fine. We introduced some good stuff there. And then I think he's been appearing in Aaron's Avengers, which I hate that book, and I'm not liking what they're doing with Moon Knight. But this is this right here. Moon Knight Volume 8 is where the character should have ended. It started in June 2016. It is from Jeff Lemire, and this is my favorite run of the character. It's the one I'd recommend to everyone, except you have to have this kind of understanding of who this character is before you go into it. That's why I always say you start with the Houston run, but then you're like, well, you need the gravitas of the previous stuff to go back, so you start at the beginning. That's what this list pretty much is. It's just me talking about how you get to this final chapter of the character. Volume 8 by Jeff Lemire takes the character in a direction that I'm surprised it hasn't been taken in that much before. We are inside Mark's head for most of this book. We start off, Mark is in a hospital. He doesn't know how he got there or what his purpose is for doing here, and he's trying to find Khonshu. Everyone inside his head is telling him, Moon Knight is not you. You are not Moon Knight. Khonshu doesn't exist. You are making this up. You are crazy. And as the series progresses, it kind of becomes this struggle between Mark and Khonshu to understand why he was betrayed or what's going on there and the sacrifices that have to be made along the way, what is real and what isn't. It's the culmination of everything this character is about. It takes everything in the mythos of the other superheroes, of the villains, of the history, of the Khonshu stuff. Everything about the character is thrown into these 14 issues, and it works so perfectly. And it's a beautiful send-off to this character. And I really appreciate everything that this book was. The art is fantastic. The story is different and unique while still feeling like everything I wanted from a Moon Knight book. And everything about it just worked so elegantly and perfectly for me that, of course, I think it's the best Moon Knight run of all time. Now, for new readers, it's a lot to process because you could easily just go into this thinking, okay, he's crazy. What's going on inside his mind? But having the weight of everything else I listed, having read all the stuff from the first volume and West Coast Avengers, Secret Avengers, Vengeance, the Houston stuff, all of that really just helps make this all that much better. And that's why I think if you are going to get into Moon Knight, you should read all these books in order. You really, because it just helps the overall picture of this character and makes it more interesting, more compelling. And I want more people to like this character. And yes, there's a lot of runs in here I didn't mention. I didn't bring up the Bendis stuff. I didn't bring up the Warren Ellis stuff for good reason. These are the ones that show you how to tell this story. These are the ones that show you who this character is and where he's come from and how far he's gone and where he's ended up. The stuff after the Lemire run, it might not be my favorite, but there's still something in there I think to be said. And I hope a lot of this stuff influences what the Disney Plus show is going to be, because it should be very heavy in this idea of the tragic character fighting his god and fighting himself at the same time. How does he redeem himself from that arc, and how does it drive him crazy to the point where he gets, dissociative personality disorder, right? How does he come back from that? So I love it a lot. So let's recap one more time the runs you should read if you are a new reader of Moon Knight. Starting off with Volume 1 from 1980. Going into West Coast Avengers Volume 2, where he starts to show up in issue 21. That started in 1987 when he shows up, so that's really fun there. Going into Moon Knight Volume 5, which premiered in August of 2006. It's the beginning of the Charlie Houston run, and it's really good stuff. Going into Vengeance of the Moon Knight, which is from 2009. It's 10 issues long, shows the redemption of this character. Going into Secret Avengers, he is now a hero in the Marvel Universe. It's a great run. Brew Baker, fantastic writer. Leaving us to the Jeff Lemire run, which came out in 2016. It is 14 issues, and it is Volume 8 of the character. This is the best character, in my opinion. I love him more than I love any other literacy character. And just giving a chance to share this with you guys is something that means the world to me, because I'm talking about someone who's influenced my life in so many ways. It's influenced how I write, how I perceive stories, what kind of comic books I've been interested in, what kind of films I want to write, and how I became interested in this kind of stuff. My popular culture obsession started with Moon Knight. It started with him. It's going to end with him. I will read everything that comes out about this character because I love him that much. There's so much important about this character, and I want you, the new reader of this guy, to share in my joy. There is so much to like about this character, so much rich history, so much new history, and you can fall in love with him wherever you read him or wherever you start to read him. So thank you guys so much for watching this rendition of the Moon Watch. I'm Taryn Barker. If you want more Moon Knight content, you just have to like and subscribe to the channel, because it's definitely going to be coming, especially when we get more announcements from the television side of things. You can expect a lot more there. But check out my casting video, check out my pitches for the comics, check out my reviews of some of the modern comics that came out from this character. And as always, you can see me on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.
Tsunami Studios.